These are both Icelandic F-roads. One can be driven comfortably in a small 4x4, while the other could flood your engine, destroy your car and leave you stranded in the middle of Iceland's Highlands. And that's the problem, because renting a 4x4 does not automatically mean that you can drive every F-road. These roads can take you to some of the most beautiful, most isolated parts of Iceland. But the car you need, how long the drive takes, whether you should even attempt it, that depends entirely on the exact route and the conditions that day. And so before you drive into Iceland's Highlands, here's 8 things that you definitely need to know. So the first F-road mistake usually happens before you even arrive to Iceland, and that's booking the wrong 4x4. Some F-roads are basically rough gravel. You can drive those comfortably in a smaller 4x4, a Dacia Duster, Toyota RAV4, something like that. Others are a different story. Deep potholes, loose rocks, steep sections, rivers with no bridges. Those need real ground clearance and a more capable vehicle. Here's the thing about the 4x4 label, it only tells you part of the story. It doesn't tell you how deep it can safely wade the rivers, and it definitely doesn't tell you, whether the rental company even allows it on the road that you are planning to drive. A small SUV may be perfect for one route and completely unsuitable for another. And even a larger vehicle isn't automatically safe in deep water. And so before you book anything, check 2 things. First, is that car that you are planning to book even allowed on the road that you are planning to drive? And second, does the route include river crossings or rough sections that the vehicle can actually handle? Do not book a generic 4x4 first and figure out the route later. Choose the route and then choose the car. Second thing that you should know before entering F-roads is that you shouldn't really rely on Google Maps to tell you whether an F-road is open or not. Highland roads don't all open on the same date. Some may open in June, others can stay closed well into July, depending on the snow, the weather, and how quickly the ground dries after winter. And the closure doesn't always mean that there is a wall of snow physically blocking the road. During the spring thaw, the ground can get extremely soft. Drive across it too early and you can leave deep ruts and seriously damage the road. And so if a road is marked closed, don't drive around the barrier and assume your vehicle can handle it. Closed road in Iceland does not mean that it's just difficult, it means it is closed, and so entering is strictly forbidden, and that basically applies no matter how capable your car is. And so before you enter the Highlands, always check the current road conditions on road.is. It shows you which roads are open, restricted or difficult to drive. And also check it again on the morning that you leave, because what you looked at yesterday may be already outdated. Alright, number 3, never estimate an F-road by kilometers alone. A route can look short on the map and still take hours. You could be driving across potholes, loose rocks, deep corrugations, sections where slowing almost to walking speed is the only sensible option. And if the route includes river crossings, that adds even more time. You need to stop, assess the conditions and really approach the whole situation carefully. And so when you plan your day, don't just ask how far the route is, ask how long it normally takes based on the conditions and the kind of road that you are planning to drive. You also can't assume you'll find fuel, food or other services once you are inside the Highlands. The Gasvaktin map can actually help you find the last petrol stations before you enter. But when you look at the map, you can clearly see that farther inland there are basically no normal petrol stations at all. And that's why I also strongly recommend refueling before you enter, even if you've still got like half of a tank. Just know roughly how far the car can travel and also make sure that you have enough fuel not just to finish the route, but for example also to turn around if something ahead becomes impossible. It's also a good idea to bring more food and water than you think you will need. The Highlands are basically not the place to build an itinerary with zero margin for error. Alright, number 4, and this is where the most expensive mistakes happen. A river that looks manageable from inside the car can be deeper, faster and far more dangerous than it appears. And the safest line isn't always a straight line from one side of the road to the other. That's why you need to stop before entering the water and actually study the crossing. First thing I usually do is that I try to find where the road actually continues on the other side of the river, because it is not always that obvious. Then I usually look at the strength and the direction of the current, and I also try to see where the other vehicles have crossed and whether there might be any large rocks or, for example, some sudden hidden drops beneath the surface. On some popular routes, you'll find posts connected by a rope, marking the intended crossing line. When those markers are there, stay close to that route instead of inventing your own. But don't just assume the rope guarantees the river is safe that day, because water levels can change fast. And you should also know the approximate wading depth of your vehicle, and you can usually find it easily online or just confirm it with your rental company. And regardless of what the vehicle can technically handle, the rental agreement still needs to allow the crossing. And sometimes it is also worth waiting for a bit and watching another similar vehicle cross that river first and try to understand the correct line better and also get a better sense of the depth of the river. People also sometimes walk through a river to check the depth and the riverbed. In Iceland, I would only even consider that when the current is weak and the crossing is relatively small. Do not blindly walk into a cold, fast-flowing glacier river just to test it. And if you can't assess the crossing safely, just turn around. And if you do decide to cross, remember, choose your line before you enter. Make sure the car is in 4-wheel drive. Then select a low gear before entering the water and drive slowly and steadily. And where the marked route allows it, cross slightly downstream with the current, rather than fighting directly against it. And this is also where people mess up and it destroys countless of cars every summer. What basically happens here is that people take a massive run up and they think that they need speed to force their way through. Driving too fast pushes water high into the engine bay and increases the risk of water getting into the engine. And if that happens, the engine can basically stop almost immediately, and then you are stranded in the middle of the river and you are looking at a difficult recovery, and then you are looking at a repair bill that's worth thousands, maybe tens of thousands of dollars. The tricky part is that standard rental insurance generally excludes rivers and water damage. A small number of companies now advertise specific protection for eligible vehicles, but the coverage keeps changing, and so read the exact terms carefully. It's also worth remembering that glacier rivers can rise later in the day, especially after a warm weather or, for example, heavy rain, and crossing that was manageable in the morning can now look completely different a few hours later. And so if your route includes serious rivers, I think that it is a good practice to try to reach them early in the day if you can, and leave yourself enough time to turn around if needed. If the water looks too deep, the current is too strong, or you simply don't know what's underneath it, do not cross. Missing one road is far cheaper than destroying your car or risking your life. Now number 5. The weather that's at the start of the road tells you almost nothing about what you'll find deeper in the Highlands. This is a high exposed landscape. Temperatures are often lower than around the coast, the wind can be a lot stronger, and fog, rain or even snow can move in fast. Towards the end of the season, the Highlands are also among the first parts of Iceland to see fresh snow. And so don't just check whether it's going to rain, look at the wind, look at the temperature, and look at how the conditions are expected to change through the day. Use weather.is for the official forecast and road.is for current road conditions. Also carry warm and waterproof clothes even if the weather looks good when you leave. And one thing that I just can't stress enough, don't let tightly planned itinerary pressure you into continuing on the road when the conditions are clearly getting worse. The Highlands are incredible when the weather is decent, but when it turns, they can become an absolute miserable place to be. Alright, number 6. Expect to lose a mobile signal. Iceland has surprisingly good coverage around populated areas and along much of the ring road, but drive inland and the signal gets patchy fast, and often it can disappear completely. And if your navigation depends entirely on an internet connection, then you can lose your route exactly when you need it the most. And that's why you should always download an offline map and save the complete route before you even enter the Highlands. And that's also one of the reasons I host my Iceland map and guide on Rexby. I have lost signal in the Highlands more times than I can count, and more than once the offline map was the only reason I actually knew where exactly I was and where I was going to go next. You can download the map or your complete itinerary before the trip and still see your live GPS position with no signal at all, and I'll leave the link below this video. It is also worth saving the rental company's emergency number and telling someone which route you are actually taking and when you expect to be back. And for more remote plans, you can also submit a travel plan through Safe Travel. That gives rescue teams important information about where you plan to go and when you expect to return if something goes wrong. And in an emergency, call 112 or use the 112 Iceland app. Number 7. You cannot drive the F-road the same way that you drive the ring road. Deep potholes and rocks can appear with very little warning, and so just remember to slow down before any rough sections and keep well to your right, over any blind crests. And before you enter the Highlands, it's also worth checking what your rental car actually carries in case of puncture and what the rental company expects you to do about it. Does it have a proper spare tire or just a repair kit? And Should you call the roadside assistance, or are you expected to replace the tire yourself? These are some of the things that you definitely want to know before you are standing beside the road in a horrible weather with a flat tire and no signal. Also, one optional tip for anyone who is comfortable messing with their car a bit: tire pressure. And so here is why I mention it. A while ago I was basically driving through the Highlands and I ran into a couple of people that I knew and they happened to have a pressure gauge with them. And later into the conversation, when they found out that I was in a rental car, we decided to check my tires, just out of curiosity, and it was over 40 psi. And that's a horrendous number for a road like that. And so we just let some air out and what do you know? Suddenly it felt like a completely different car. The ride is just so much more comfortable when your tire pressures are actually set correctly. And so if you can either find a gas station that has the pump, which also has the pressure gauge on it, or you can bring your own pressure gauge to Iceland and then let some air out by yourself, because rental cars are always set for paved roads and nobody's out there adjusting pressures for corrugated F-roads. There is just a good chance that yours is way too high for what you are about to drive on. And so if you don't already know what you are doing, just leave it alone and instead just try to drive more slowly and more carefully. But if you are spending several days out there driving on F-roads, then I think it is worth throwing a small gauge in your bag. And number 8, no matter how experienced you are or how capable your vehicle is, never leave the marked road. Off-road driving is illegal in Iceland, and that includes crossing untouched ground to reach a viewpoint, creating your own shortcut, or driving around a flooded or a difficult section of the road. In June 2026, French travelers in 2 Land Rovers were caught driving extensively off-road in the Highlands, and the police got involved, and they were fined several hundred thousand Icelandic kronas. And this gets taken very seriously here, because Iceland's soil and vegetation are extremely fragile, and a single set of tire tracks can stay visible here for years, sometimes even decades. And so if the marked road ahead becomes too difficult, flooded or impassable, do not create a new route around it. Just turn around. There are already more than enough incredible highland roads to explore, and so there is absolutely no reason to drive off-road in Iceland. And so driving Iceland's F-roads can really take you to the places that most visitors will never reach, but as you can also see, a proper planning is really the key here. And so remember, choose the route before the car, leave more time and fuel than you think you need, and never follow the river, the weather or the road just because turning around feels disappointing. And if you are still looking for a suitable rental car, then I have left links and discount codes for the companies I personally recommend below this video. And I'm also putting together a more detailed F-road guide to help you figure out, which roads are actually suitable for the vehicle that you have, and I'll add that below once that's ready. And if you're curious what driving one of Iceland's most beautiful highland routes actually looks like, then watch this video next.